The Galactic Empire had stood unchallenged for thousands of years. Its fleets patrolled the vast reaches of space, its warships a terrifying symbol of dominance. Hundreds of alien species had bowed before its might, their homeworlds annexed, their cultures erased, their people forced into servitude. The Empire ruled with an iron fist, confident that no force in the galaxy could stand against it. That was until they met humanity. The Empire's first encounter with Earth had been unceremonious. A scouting vessel had stumbled upon the Sol system, expecting to find a primitive world, perhaps a fledgling civilization just beginning to understand space travel. Instead, they found a species that had already colonized its neighboring planets, constructed massive space stations, and, most concerningly, built weapons that rivaled those of the Empire. At first, the Empire had dismissed humanity as an anomaly, an upstart species that had advanced too quickly for its own good. It sent a diplomatic envoy, demanding Earth's submission. The message had been clear: surrender and be assimilated into the Empire, or be annihilated. The reply had been equally clear: no. The Emperor had laughed when he read the response. He had seen this before. Countless civilizations that believed they could resist the Empire. None had succeeded. Humanity would be no different. So the Empire sent its fleets. They arrived in the Sol system with overwhelming force, hundreds of warships bristling with weapons capable of reducing entire planets to rubble. They expected Earth's surrender within hours. Instead, they found hell waiting for them. When the Empire's ships entered the system, they were met with a coordinated strategic defense unlike anything they had ever encountered. Humanity did not scatter in fear. They did not attempt to negotiate. They fought, and they fought like demons. The Imperial fleet had expected planetary defenses, perhaps a few orbital stations with outdated weapons. What they found was a fully armed, war-hardened military force with ships that moved like predators in the void. Humanity's vessels were smaller than the Empire's, but they were faster, more maneuverable, and bristling with weapons that cut through Imperial armor like a hot knife through flesh. Admiral Harkon, commanding the invasion, watched in stunned silence as his capital ships, vessels that had brought entire worlds to their knees, began to fall. Swarms of human fighters darted between the Empire's sluggish warships, striking critical points, crippling engines, and targeting weapon systems with terrifying precision. And then came humanity's fleet. They hadn't just been defending Earth. They had built their own armada. Dozens of sleek, deadly battleships emerged from behind Luna, engines flaring as they surged toward the Imperial fleet. Their weapons didn't rely on traditional plasma or energy-based technology. They used railguns, massive, devastating cannons that accelerated metal projectiles at speeds that defied comprehension. The Empire had dismissed kinetic weapons as outdated, primitive. They had never faced human engineering. A single round from a railgun tore through an Imperial battleship's hull, cutting through armor and bulkheads like paper. Explosions rippled through the fleet as the humans unleashed their fury. For the first time in centuries, an Imperial fleet was losing. Admiral Harkon's face turned pale as he watched ship after ship vanish from his command screen. His forces were being destroyed. This is impossible, he muttered. They're just humans. But it was happening, and it was only the beginning. When the battle was over, the Empire's fleet was in ruins. Harkon's flagship was one of the few vessels that managed to escape, limping back to Imperial space with the news. The Emperor was waiting when Harkon returned, his golden robes gleaming under the artificial lights of the Imperial palace. "You have failed me," the Emperor said coldly, watching the broken admiral kneel before him. "Explain yourself." Harkon swallowed. "The humans, my Emperor, they are unlike any race we have encountered before." The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "They are primitives. They should not have been able to stand against us." Harkon shook his head. They are not primitives. They are something else. Something terrifying. He hesitated, then pulled up a holographic recording of the battle. The Emperor watched as Imperial ships were torn apart, as human vessels moved with deadly precision. And then, finally, he saw the message. It had been broadcasted across the Imperial channels after the battle. A human general, standing in front of the burning wreckage of an Imperial dreadnought, his face calm, his voice steady. "To the Emperor of the Galactic Empire," he said, "you came to our system expecting an easy victory. You came to enslave us." He leaned forward, his eyes dark with a promise. "You have made a mistake." The transmission ended. Silence filled the Imperial chamber. The Emperor stared at the darkened screen, his fingers curling into fists. Harkon swallowed hard. "What are your orders, my Emperor?" The Emperor's jaw tightened. "Send the full might of the Empire," he said. "Burn their worlds. Erase them from existence." Back on Earth, preparations had already begun. The battle for Sul had been a victory, but humanity knew the war was far from over. The Empire would return, this time with everything it had. And humanity would be ready. Across the colonies, shipyards worked day and night, constructing new warships, arming them with the same railguns that had torn through the Empire's fleet. Scientists developed new shielding technology, engineers built faster, deadlier fighters. Every man and woman capable of fighting was preparing for what was to come. Humanity was not fighting for conquest. They were not fighting for power. They were fighting to survive. And if the Empire thought they could crush Earth, as they had done to so many others, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. The Emperor wasted no time. Within days of the disastrous battle over Sul, he had mobilized the Imperial First Armada, a force so vast that its very presence had subjugated entire star systems without a single shot being fired. Thousands of warships, some the size of small moons, assembled in the Imperial core. At the heart of this fleet was the Doom-Forged, a colossal dreadnought said to be invincible, its hull reinforced with quantum shielding that no known weapon could penetrate. The order was clear. Humanity must be annihilated. The Empire's admirals were confident. Their first defeat had been an embarrassment, but now they would unleash the true might of the Imperial war machine. They would not underestimate the humans again. But what they didn't know was that humanity had no intention of waiting. High above Mars, hidden within the asteroid belt, the HSS Revenant drifted in the shadows. It was one of humanity's newest warships, built after the Battle of Sol with technology reverse-engineered from captured Imperial wreckage. Sleek and almost invisible to sensors, the Revenant was a ghost in the void. Captain Marcus Kane, a hardened veteran, stood on the bridge, watching the incoming sensor feeds. "We've confirmed it," his intelligence officer said. "They're coming, thousands of them." A lesser man might have felt despair. Kane only felt determination. "Send word to High Command," he ordered. "It's time to move to Phase 2. The Revenant vanished into the darkness, heading back to Earth. Humanity had no illusions about what was coming. The Empire would not offer a second chance. The only way to survive was to strike first. Korthos Prime was the Empire's largest shipyard, a planet-sized factory world responsible for building over 30% of the Imperial fleet. Destroying it wouldn't just be a blow, it would be devastating. Admiral Elizabeth Connors, the supreme commander of Earth's military forces, had known from the start that the war couldn't be won through defense alone. If humanity wanted to survive, it had to cripple the Empire's ability to wage war, and so Operation Eclipse was born. A strike force of 80 human warships, led by the newly completed HSS Dominion, set course for Korthos Prime. The Dominion was Earth's first true dreadnought, a behemoth designed to stand toe-to-toe with the best the Empire had to offer. The plan was bold, reckless, maybe even suicidal, but humanity didn't have the luxury of playing it safe. When the human fleet arrived, the Imperials didn't know what hit them. The Empire had assumed humanity would remain on the defensive, cowering behind their planetary defenses. They had never imagined that the humans would be bold enough to strike at the heart of Imperial territory. The orbital defenses of Korthos Prime were formidable. Hundreds of automated gun platforms, planetary shield generators, and battle stations guarded the shipyards. But the humans had a weapon the Empire had never encountered before: superluminal torpedoes. The moment the Dominion exited FTL, it unleashed a volley of torpedoes traveling at faster-than-light speeds, bypassing traditional defenses entirely. The first salvo struck critical shield relays, shorting out power grids across the planet's surface. In an instant, Korthos Prime was vulnerable. Then came the ground assault. Dropships filled with human shock troops descended onto the planet's surface, targeting shipyard control centers, fuel depots, and command bunkers. The Empire's soldiers were trained to fight in open warfare, but the humans fought like predators, hitting hard, striking fast, and disappearing before the enemy could retaliate. It was chaos. Entire factory complexes exploded, sending debris raining down over the city-sized shipyards. Imperial officers scrambled to regain control, but the humans were already inside their networks, hacking into systems, shutting down orbital defenses, and rerouting power away from critical sectors. It was an impossible victory, but the humans were making it happen. Back on the Imperial throne world, the news of Korthos Prime's destruction sent shockwaves through the ruling elite. "The humans did what?" one of the Emperor's advisors gasped. "They destroyed one of our most vital shipyards," a military officer confirmed. "Our losses are staggering. The fleet production schedule has been set back by years." The Emperor sat in silence, his face unreadable. His claws tapped against the armrest of his throne, his mind racing. "This changes everything," he muttered. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Empire was experiencing fear. Back on Earth, the celebrations were brief. The attack on Korthos Prime had been a stunning success, but humanity knew it had only bought itself time. The Empire would come back with a vengeance, and when they did, there would be no mercy. Admiral Connors gathered her top commanders in a war room beneath the surface of Luna Base. The holographic display showed a galaxy-wide map, with thousands of Imperial fleets moving like a tidal wave toward Earth. "They're still coming," one officer said grimly. "Then we make sure we're ready," Connors replied. Plans were drawn, ships were built, weapons were designed. Humanity had made its move. Now the real war was about to begin. And this time, they weren't just fighting to survive. They were fighting to win. The destruction of Korthos Prime was more than a military disaster. It was an insult the Empire could not tolerate. Never before had an enemy dared to strike so deep into Imperial space, let alone win. The Emperor was furious. The throne room of the Imperial Palace was silent as he stood before his most trusted warlords, his golden robes flowing like liquid metal. His gaze burned with cold fury as he addressed his commanders. "These creatures have overstepped their bounds," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "They believe themselves our equals. They believe they can hurt us." He turned toward Grand Admiral Kael Vortanis, the Supreme Commander of the Imperial Navy. A veteran of 1,000 campaigns, Vortanis was the most ruthless strategist the Empire had ever produced. Entire species had vanished under his command. "Grand Admiral," the Emperor said, his words sharp as blades, "you will remind humanity of its place, burn their worlds, erase them from history, make them suffer." Vortanis bowed. "It will be done." And so the Great Purge began. The Second Imperial Armada, one of the largest battle groups ever assembled, set course for the human colonies. It wasn't just a military strike, it was extermination. Their first target? Proxima Centauri. Home to over 80 million humans, Proxima had become one of Earth's most important colonies. Its shipyards produced some of humanity's finest warships, and its population had been fully mobilized for the war effort. It never stood a chance. The Empire came without warning. Massive planet-cracker warships arrived in orbit and unleashed hell. Cities burned as plasma bombardments rained from the sky. Defense fleets scrambled to respond, but the sheer size of the Imperial assault was overwhelming. The colony's orbital stations were torn apart in minutes. Admiral Erickson, in command of Proxima's defenses, sent a desperate message to Earth. "We can't hold. There are too many. Oh God, they're targeting civilians." Then the transmission cut out. By the time humanity's reinforcements arrived, it was too late. Proxima Centauri was gone. 80 million men, women, and children wiped from existence. The massacre of Proxima sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. The Empire had always been brutal. But this was genocide. On neutral worlds, alien diplomats whispered in hushed voices. For the first time, they began to question the Empire's power. If a species as young and ferocious as humanity could wound the Empire, then perhaps... The Empire wasn't as invincible as it seemed, but humanity wasn't interested in diplomacy. They were out for blood. After Proxima, the Imperial Armada moved toward Epsilon Eridani, another major human colony. They expected another easy slaughter. They were wrong. This time, humanity was waiting. The moment the Imperial fleet arrived, they found themselves ambushed. Hidden among the planet's asteroid belt was the largest human fleet ever assembled. Over 300 warships, including the HSS Titan, humanity's newest super dreadnought. Admiral Elizabeth Connors was in command. And she had a message for the Empire. "This is for Proxima, you bastards." The battle was unlike anything the Empire had ever faced. Human railguns ripped through Imperial warships before they could even return fire. Stealth corvettes darted between enemy lines, launching devastating attacks on Imperial carriers. The Titan's experimental plasma lances burned through shields like paper, cutting entire cruisers in half with a single shot. It was carnage. For the first time in history, an Imperial Grand Armada was annihilated, and at the center of it all was the Titan. The Empire's flagship, the Doomforged, tried to retreat. It never got the chance. A full barrage from the Titan pierced its engines, tore through its reactor core, and split the monstrous dreadnought in two. The Doomforged, once a symbol of Imperial dominance, was gone. And with it, so was the Empire's illusion of invincibility. Back on Earth, the news of Proxima's destruction had sent the world into mourning. But when word of the Titan's victory spread, that mourning turned into rage. Humanity was done running. Factories churned out warships at an unprecedented rate. Every able-bodied person enlisted. Scientists worked around the clock to develop new weapons, new defenses, new strategies. The Imperial fleet had come to end humanity, but all they had done was make humanity stronger. Back in the Imperial Palace, the Emperor sat alone, staring at the battle reports. Proxima had burned, but so had the Doomforged. Humanity was not broken. They were rising. And for the first time in his long reign, the Emperor felt something foreign creep into his mind. Doubt. Earth knew the war wasn't won yet. The Empire still had fleets, armies, and planets beyond counting. But now, humanity had something the Empire had never given its enemies before. Hope. The Empire had made many mistakes in its long reign. It had crushed civilizations, enslaved entire species, and rewritten history to glorify its own power. But no mistake was greater than what it had done to humanity. The massacre at Proxima Centauri had been meant to instill fear. Instead, it had awakened something far more dangerous. Rage. Humanity was no longer fighting for survival. They were fighting for vengeance, and they were about to bring hell to the Empire's doorstep. Humanity had learned a painful lesson in the war so far. They couldn't outmatch the Empire in sheer numbers. The Empire had thousands of fleets, countless soldiers, and near-limitless resources. A direct war of attrition would be suicide. So humanity did what they did best. They adapted. Instead of fighting head-on, they waged a new kind of war, a war of sabotage, deception, and precision strikes. The Silent Fleet was born. These were humanity's deadliest ships, stealth corvettes, infiltrator vessels, and cyber warfare drones designed to strike the Empire where it hurt the most. Their first target, the Imperial supply lines. While the Empire had endless fleets, those fleets needed fuel, food, and resources. Their war machine was massive, but it was not invulnerable. The Silent Fleet launched dozens of covert raids, targeting Imperial logistics centers, fuel depots, and manufacturing plants. Entire supply convoys vanished without a trace. Critical communication relays were hacked and scrambled, sowing chaos within the Empire's ranks. On occupied worlds, human special forces infiltrated cities and incited full-scale rebellions, arming enslaved populations with stolen Imperial weapons. It wasn't just war anymore. It was a revolution. The Emperor's fury grew with every lost fleet, every sabotaged factory, every system that fell into anarchy. And so he turned to his most ruthless enforcer, High Inquisitor Malachar. Malachar was not a soldier. He was a monster, a cruel, calculating strategist who had crushed hundreds of planetary uprisings with unspeakable brutality. To the Empire, he was a hero. To its enemies, he was a nightmare. His orders were simple. Find the humans. Crush them. Make them suffer. His first move was to attack the rebellious worlds, beginning with Verathis, a planet where humanity had inspired an uprising against Imperial rule. He didn't send troops to pacify the rebellion. He sent bioweapons. A new Imperial plague, engineered to target human DNA, was unleashed upon the planet. The disease spread in hours, turning its victims into twisted husks of agony before death. Within 3 days, the population of Verathis was extinct. The Empire broadcasted the horror across the galaxy, sending a clear message: resistance is futile. Submit or suffer the same fate. But Malachar had miscalculated, because humanity had been watching, and now they were coming for him. Humanity could not allow Malachar to continue his reign of terror. His death was non-negotiable. And so a Black Ops team, handpicked from Earth's deadliest special forces, was assembled. Their mission was simple: infiltrate the Imperial core, eliminate Malachar, send a message to the Empire that no one was untouchable. The team, known only as Shadow Hand, was led by Commander Jason Hunt, a man with a reputation for doing the impossible. Their infiltration was meticulous. Using stolen Imperial clearance codes, they hijacked a diplomatic transport bound for the Imperial capital. They moved through the city like ghosts, bypassing security, hacking surveillance systems, and planting explosive traps for their escape. They found Malachar in his personal stronghold, a fortress guarded by an army of elite Imperial soldiers. It didn't matter. The first silenced railgun shot took out his guards. The second pierced Malachar's skull. By the time the alarms blared, the Shadow Hand was already gone, leaving behind a message carved into Malachar's throne. For Proxima. The assassination shook the Empire to its core. Never in its history had someone so high-ranking been killed by an enemy. Never before had the Empire felt vulnerable. The Emperor himself ordered the city locked down, but it was too late. The seeds of fear had been planted. If Malachar could die, then no one was safe. The war was changing. The Empire had expected a short, brutal conquest. Instead, it was dragging into a nightmare. The Empire's greatest advantage, its sheer size, was now becoming a liability. It had too many systems to defend, too many supply chains to protect, too many enemies rising in the shadows. Humanity wasn't fighting the Empire head-on. They were tearing it apart from within. And worst of all, other species were starting to take notice. The Empire had ruled for millennia because the galaxy feared it. But now that fear was cracking. If humanity could stand against the Empire, then maybe others could too. Humanity had started this war alone. But now, they were gaining allies. Small rebellions were turning into full-scale insurgencies. Slave worlds were rising up, inspired by Earth's defiance. Even within the Empire, whispers of treason were spreading, officers questioning whether the Empire was truly invincible. The Emperor knew he had to act, fast, and so he issued a single, final order. End this war! Wipe them out! No more half measures! Bring the full force of the Empire down upon them. The largest fleet in history. 5,000 warships, entire armies, planet-crushing superweapons began to mobilize. It would be a war unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. Either humanity would fall, or the Empire itself would burn. The Empire had finally committed to total war. The Imperial Annihilation Fleet, 5,000 warships strong, began its march toward Earth and the remaining human colonies. Never before had such an armada been assembled. Planet-killer dreadnoughts, entire legions of cybernetic infantry, and experimental doomsday weapons capable of tearing moons apart. This was not just an invasion, it was extermination. The Emperor had given a simple order: no prisoners, no survivors. Reduce their worlds to dust. The countdown to humanity's last stand had begun. Beneath the surface of Luna Base, the leaders of humanity gathered. Admiral Elizabeth Connors stood at the center of the war room, surrounded by Earth's greatest minds. Military tacticians, scientists, and rebel leaders from across the galaxy. A holographic projection showed the Empire's fleet advancing like a tidal wave. The silence in the room was heavy. "They'll be here in less than a month," one officer said grimly. "We can't stop them. There are too many." A murmur of uncertainty spread through the room. For all their victories, for all their resilience, how could humanity possibly win against a force this massive? But Connors refused to accept defeat. She took a deep breath and slammed her fist on the table. "We don't need to defeat them head-on," she said. "We just need to break them." Eyes turned toward her. "We can't win a war of attrition," she continued. "But what if we take away their will to fight? What if we hit them where it hurts the most?" She turned to the holographic map and pointed at the Imperial throne world. A stunned silence followed. "You're suggesting attacking the Imperial capital?" one commander asked. "Yes," Connors said. "If we assassinate the Emperor and destroy his command structure, the Empire will collapse from within." It was madness. It was impossible. But it was also their only chance. The plan was bold, reckless, maybe even suicidal. A strike team of humanity's best warriors, led by Commander Jason Hunt, would infiltrate the Imperial throne world and eliminate the Emperor. Meanwhile, humanity's remaining fleet, a mere 300 ships, would launch a desperate diversionary assault, drawing as much of the Annihilation Fleet away from Earth as possible. It was a gamble. If they failed, Earth would be defenseless. But if they succeeded, the Empire would fall. 3 weeks later, the sky burned. The Imperial Annihilation Fleet arrived, descending upon the Sol system like a storm of fire. Their warships blotted out the stars, their weapons glowing with the energy of 1,000 suns. Earth's fleet, outnumbered 15-1, charged forward without hesitation. Railguns fired. Explosions rippled across the void. Human warships maneuvered with deadly precision, punching above their weight class, taking out Imperial vessels 10 times their size. But for every Imperial ship destroyed, 10 more took its place. The battle was a slaughter, but it was a distraction, because as the chaos raged in orbit, a single cloaked infiltration ship slipped past the carnage, heading toward the heart of the Empire. The Imperial throne world was a fortress, protected by legions of soldiers, AI-controlled defenses, and planetary shields stronger than anything humanity had ever faced. But humanity had come prepared. Using stolen Imperial access codes, the infiltration team bypassed the planetary blockade, landing inside the Grand Palace itself. They moved like ghosts, cutting down guards with silenced railguns and energy blades. Every step brought them closer to their target, the Emperor's personal chamber. Then the alarms blared. They had been discovered. The doors to the throne room slammed shut behind them. And there, sitting atop his golden throne, was the Emperor himself. He was not afraid. "You think you can kill a god?" he sneered, rising to his feet. His armored robes shimmered with energy shielding, his hands glowing with forbidden technology. Then the room exploded into chaos. The Imperial Guard stormed in, opening fire. The humans fought like demons, moving with impossible speed, their weapons tearing through the elite warriors like paper. And then, Hunt charged the Emperor. The two clashed in the center of the chamber, warrior against god. Energy shields flared, blades clashed. The Emperor fought with inhuman strength, his blows sending shockwaves through the room. But Hunt didn't stop. He fought not for glory, not for power, but for every world the Empire had destroyed, for every child killed on Proxima, for every city turned to ash, for humanity's future. And then, he struck the final blow. A single railgun round, fired point-blank into the Emperor's skull. The golden helm shattered, the Emperor's body collapsed, and the Empire died with him. The death of the Emperor sent shockwaves across the galaxy. The Imperial command structure collapsed overnight. Without their God King, the Empire's admirals turned on each other, vying for power. Some surrendered, others fled, and many were executed by their own officers. Earth's fleet, on the brink of destruction, suddenly found the Imperial forces breaking apart. Victory was theirs. Months later, the war was over. The once mighty galactic empire had crumbled into chaos. Entire worlds declared independence, vowing never to bow to tyranny again. And at the center of it all, humanity stood victorious. No longer the hunted, no longer the underdogs, but the liberators of the galaxy. Admiral Connors stood on the bridge of the Titan, watching the stars. The war was over, but the future was just beginning. Humanity had not just survived. They had won. The war was over, but the scars it left behind would take centuries to heal. The once mighty galactic empire was gone, its fleets shattered, its ruling elite dead or in hiding. What remained were fractured worlds, struggling to define their future. And at the heart of it all stood humanity. For the first time in history, Earth was not just another world in the galaxy. It was the center of it. In the aftermath of the war, former imperial territories fell into chaos. Without the Emperor's rule, warlords rose to power, each trying to carve out their own dominion. Some sought to restore the old ways, but others saw an opportunity for freedom. Humanity had a choice. Would they conquer, or would they rebuild? The war had cost them billions of lives. The temptation to exact revenge on the former imperial worlds was strong. Many voices in Earth's new government argued that humanity should take the throne for itself, ruling over the galaxy as the Empire once did. But Admiral Connors, now the most respected leader in human history, had only one answer. We did not fight for conquest. We fought to end tyranny. And so, humanity took a different path. Instead of ruling through fear, Earth helped the fractured worlds form a new alliance, one built on mutual defense, trade, and cooperation. It was not an empire. It was a republic. The United Systems Federation was born. A coalition of former imperial colonies, newly liberated worlds, and alien civilizations that had suffered under the Empire's rule. For the first time in galactic history, power was shared, not hoarded by a single species, and at its center was Earth, not as conquerors, but as the spark of a new age. Not everyone accepted the new order. Some imperial admirals refused to surrender, retreating into the shadows, gathering remnants of the fleet, and vowing vengeance. Among them was Grand Admiral Vortanus, once the Emperor's most trusted warlord, now the leader of a shattered remnant force. He had seen his god fall, but he refused to believe the war was over. "We will rise again," he promised his followers. "We will burn Earth to the ground." He fled beyond the known systems, disappearing into the dark regions of space. Rumors spread of secret imperial bases, hidden fleets waiting for the day they could strike back. And so the war did not truly end. It simply changed. The Silent Fleet, once humanity's shadow force during the war, was now repurposed for a new mission. Hunt the last remnants of the Empire. Find them. Eliminate them. The war may have been won, but humanity would never let another empire rise again. With peace beginning to take hold, humanity finally turned its eyes beyond war. For centuries, Earth had been on the defensive, always fighting, always struggling to survive. But now, for the first time, they could look to the stars with hope. The first human-led expedition beyond the former imperial borders set course for a distant, uncharted world. A world untouched by war. A world where humanity could build something new. As the colony ships left Earth's orbit, carrying thousands of pioneers toward a new beginning, a message was broadcast across the galaxy. We are not conquerors, we are explorers, we are builders, and no empire, no tyrant will ever silence us again. Humanity had started this war as the underdogs. Now, they were the future. Despite the hope, despite the victories, one thing remained certain. The galaxy was still a dangerous place. There would always be those who sought power through fear, those who believed they could crush the weak. But now, there was a name that struck fear into the hearts of tyrants. A name that had brought the greatest empire in history to its knees. Humanity. And to any future empire that dared to rise, humanity's fleet would always be waiting.